it is 100% my parents' fault for that happening to me as a child. And I try and remind myself of that, and that I am the arbiter of my own destiny, and I know what happened to me and why I am that way, and discovering that is very important. But I also now have the tools and can have the tools to move forward.
This is Post Ugly. I'm Ruth Solorzano. Forging ahead in the face of abuse is an obstacle many have had to endure. As we've discovered throughout this season, finding ways to progress can be next to impossible, especially as a child. Reaching adulthood and recognizing the patterns and behaviors that have been forced upon you can have its own set of hurdles. Tools may not be readily available, and systems may be put in place that make it difficult to obtain access to help and resources. And yes, the stigma of mental health still has a ways to go. But today's technological advances and widespread information has made it more accessible than ever to combat abuse and finally move forward.
Find your thing. If I could give any advice, whatever that thing is, crystals, music, books, writing, but I think that's incredibly important. Makeup, it could be anything, but find a thing that brings you joy, that is just for you. And that's not to say that you can't share it with other people, but I think you have to do something that is for yourself, whatever that thing might be.
Even in my own experience, I found that one of the biggest things that helped me right off the bat was writing everything down in a journal.
This is Elsie Bobo. She's a certified relationship and transformation coach and the host of the upcoming podcast, Wake Up or Break Up.
It doesn't have to be like a special entry like Dear Diary, but one of those things where you could just mind dump everything and anything that's on your mind. It could be a random thought, it could be a deep thought, it could be something that you've been holding on to for a while. And once you get that out of your head and you're able to take a step back and kind of look at it and analyze it, you can see the points in the things that you wrote down that touch you. They really get you in your gut. And those are the things that you probably want to go and unpack a little more. And when you have that, if you feel like it's a little too much for yourself to deal with, I would say reach out and find a coach or a counselor or a therapist that can help you further dive into those feelings, those emotions. And sometimes it just takes another person asking you the same questions you already asked yourself in order to find those answers you're looking for.
Unearthing ways to keep yourself grounded post-abuse can seem like a never-ending dig, and in many ways it is. As survivors, making strides forward can involve a plethora of modes and techniques.
When you're having these thoughts or you're having some panic about something, some guided imagery, think of a time that you were just happy, just intrinsically happy.
Here's Dr. Christie Jenkins.
Think of that time period and go there in your head when you're stressed out. Setting boundaries, that is one of the single greatest things that you can do, because what we find with survivors is that often they don't have great boundaries because people have infringed upon those boundaries. And so they say yes to everything. Oh, yes, I can do that project. Oh, yes, I can drop that off for you. Oh, yes, I can. And they lose themselves. And so having those boundaries makes them have a sense of self. Forgive yourself. One of the greatest things that you can do is forgive yourself, because there's so much guilt and shame. And remember, it's not your shame. It's the other person's shame.
In 1986, Masaaki Imai, a Japanese theorist, introduced to the Western world the term Kaizen and made it famous through his book, The Key of Japan's Competitive Success. The Kaizen approach, which in Japanese directly translates to good change, is based on the belief that continuous incremental improvement adds up to substantial change over time.
In Japan, like trying to create the perfect trying to achieve perfection in whatever it is you're doing, even though it might be completely useless. There's something very satisfying about that, and it makes your life feel very worthwhile. There's a lot of things from my childhood that are good too, so I think I focus on those. But I think that's my personality regardless. I'm not a steward.
Order! The military really helped me out academically. So when I came back to college, it was a lot easier for me. And I actually found the military a lot easier too. I think that growing up was so intense that there was no way in hell they could scare me. There's just no way in hell. Once I realized that they couldn't really hurt me, I didn't care. I remember being 18 and I remember being worried about the future, what I was going to become. I still worry about the same damn shit.
I know you're not a parent, but is there anything you would say to parents out there listening?
Watch your children. You don't have to pry, but you just cannot let them fucking go. You know, you just can't do that. You don't have to pry, but you just can't let them wander out for hours. But that's what I would say. Just, watch out.
If your child is having drum lessons in the basement of a studio, you should be allowed to go down there at any given time and or sit your hot little fanny right there and watch your kid play the drums. If you're not allowed down there, that's a problem, and you need to say something. That is exactly how bad things happen. So as adults, the onus is on us. We have to stop this stranger danger stuff. That's a piece of it. You can teach your children not to talk to strangers, not to take their candy, but the bigger conversation really needs to be about folks that you know and trust, because what we see is a lot of grooming behaviors. And it happens a lot of times with kids who have some problems. So if they're acting up in school, or if maybe they're from a one-parent home and the one parent has to work all the time and they have to be at home by themselves, or, different pieces like that. You need to really be mindful. As adults, we can make better decisions to protect children.
Though research mainly focuses on the negative outcomes of trauma, recovery and resilience post-abuse has also been observed. The severity of past adversity can lead to increased compassion. This suggests that a person can show positive psychological changes and personal improvements after trauma from learning new coping skills, and possibly obtain an increased sense of empathy.
There's some positive aspects that I like to think about as well. I'm a white man, and I guess from the outside, it's like, especially when I was more successful, it's like, oh, you're a smart guy, doing well and all of that. But it's really given me an appreciation of other people, and I've got a really high level of empathy for people, whether it's gay people or people of color, which normally I wouldn't feel I would have a right to talk about. Sex abuse victims, rape victims, people who are in the Me Too movement. When I read their stories, I'm like, I believe them, and I feel a genuinely deep empathy for them, and I think that's a really good thing for someone like me, who has white privilege and all that business. So I sort of appreciate that. I know it's a bit dark, but I think at least I have some true insight into certain conditions and what it's like to be abused, and all that. So I think that's kind of a positive thing. I have good days and bad days. Today's a good day. I feel really positive. I went out for a big bike ride, and I feel good. kind of dreading this call, but then I thought, no, it's good. Sharing these stories with one another helps as well. To know that you're not the only one, and you're not the only person that has the kind of feelings that this experience gives us.
Sharing my story and coming out as a survivor of child sexual abuse has been the single most liberating thing I have done for myself in my life. I may not know what the future looks like. I do know that I can hold my head up high as a survivor and hopefully inspire others to do the same. The guest speaker for this season is Dr. Christie Jenkins, who is the CEO of the Family and Child Abuse Prevention Center and core faculty at Walden University. For more information and resources, visit fcapc.org. If you know of a child being abused, please report it to your local Children's Advocacy Center or call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. Thank you to our special guest, Elsie Bobo. She's a certified relationship and transformation coach and the host of the upcoming podcast, Wake Up or Break Up. Original music and sound production by Hugo Fowler. Original artwork by J. Brooks Robinson. This show was produced and edited by me, Ruth Solorzano. If you like Post Ugly, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, give us a review, and subscribe to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps other people find the show. And thank you to our courageous survivors for sharing your stories.
Write your own story, because this is not your story. This is a blip on the radar, and you have the rest of your life to formulate something wonderful.